Welcome to Sermons from the Cave. I'm Dean. Welcome to this humble place, this really cool granite cave that we found. And what we're doing, if you haven't caught on by now, if this is your first time here, is we're preparing little segments of Scripture that take about anywhere from 7 to 10 minutes to watch. We try to keep it interesting and prophetic and, try to just stay with what God had intended. It's really cold up here. There's snow on the ground, so I'm going to try to get through this without chattering my teeth here. But we're in the book of Exodus. The Israelites are camped before the mountain of God. There's always been controversy, or there's always been argument. There's always been discussion. That's a better word. There's always been discussion as to where this mountain is located. It's interesting that God hasn't allowed us to find the ark, Noah's Ark, and He hasn't allowed us to find the mountain of God yet. However, I think we're getting closer. There's some Swedish scientists that placed it more in Saudi Arabia on the east side of the Yam Suf, or the Gulf of Aqaba, which is one arm of the Red Sea, where it goes around the Sinai Peninsula. And so they're camped, the Israelites are camped at the base of the mountain, so it had to be an area, a plain, that was large enough to accommodate about 2 million, 2.5 million, 1.5, anywhere in that range, people, and still have all the topography and the landmarks. And they did find an area, I forget the name, Jebel Al-Alaz, I think it's called Jebel Al-Alaz, and it's in Saudi Arabia, and it has a plain really close to the base of it that is huge, and it's very flat, and at that time there would have been springs running through it, and creeks and such, and so there would have been a water source. Also, at the base, it looks like the Saudi Arabian government put up a fence around some boulders that look like they were set up to make a huge altar, and it just so happens has a cave, like a petroglyph, like a cave painting that would be on the outside of it of a long-horned Egyptian bull, Apis. So, all these little clues and hints are interesting. But what's happening is God calls Moses up to the mountain to give him the 10 Commandments. Now, they had just been in the wilderness. They still are in the wilderness, but he had just tested them with the manna, 2 simple rules with the manna. And also he told Moses, interestingly enough, to strike the rock, and water came out. And then later on, we're going to see how the story changes. He tells Moses to speak to the rock, and water will come out. And Moses disobeys and isn't allowed to lead the children of Israel into the Promised Land. Joshua gets that privilege. So anyway, Moses is at the top of the mountain, and he's getting the 10 Commandments from God. And I think it's important just to read them real quick. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them, nor serve them, for I am the Lord your God, a jealous God. He goes on to say that you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. And then remember the Sabbath day. You're to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor, and on the 7th day is a day of rest, the Sabbath of the Lord your God. You'll do no work, you or your son, your daughter, your servants, your livestock, your cattle, but you're just to take the day off and set it apart, which that's what holy means, to set it apart for God, and just to rest and to think about Him, think about what He's done for you, and think about how great He is, and just to meditate on Him, to pray about Him, pray to Him. Then it goes on to say, honor your mother and father. You shall not, you know what, and I actually like what it says after this. It says, honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord God is giving you. I think that's just a really neat promise that comes along with keeping that particular law. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house, or anything in your neighbor's house, or your neighbor's wife, his servant, donkey, ox, livestock, anything. And so there you have it. We have the 10 Commandments. And what's the main point we find in the book of Hebrews, we know this now, but the 10 Commandments, the law, which is known as the law, God inscribed on 2 tablets of stone, granite, with His own finger. He cut out the pieces of granite on the first tablets, He cut them out, and He wrote on the front and the back, and He gave them to Moses. Well, what happened was, all this time that Moses was up on the mountain, it says for 40 days and 40 nights, was, I believe, is just kind of figurative of a very, very long time he was up on the mountain, because God gave him instructions on how to build the tabernacle, and He gave all these laws and these judgments, when Moses and the elders are judging the people, how to do it justly, the right way to do it. So, meanwhile, Moses leaves Aaron in charge this one time, and he's coming down the mountain of God with the stone tablets, the 10 Commandments. And what has transpired since he was gone so long is that the people complained, they murmured, they complained, they went to Aaron and said, hey, give us an image, give us a God that we could worship. We need to, because they were used to that kind of idol worship in Egypt. So, being the great leader that Aaron was, he didn't just say, no, we're only going to worship the true and living God, which he knew about, but he totally caves and says, okay, give me all your earrings, break off all your earrings from your children, your daughters, your sons, your husbands, your wives, give me all the gold, and then I'll engrave it, and I'll fashion it, and I'll make you a representation of your God. And I'm paraphrasing now, so don't quote that. And so what happens is he creates this molten image of a calf, a golden calf, out of the gold from the earrings. Moses comes back with the 10 Commandments, and God had reiterated the fact more than once before He left about the first 2 commandments, about that I'm a jealous God, you shall have no other gods, you're not to make any images. I mean, He just told Moses over and over again, wrote it in stone, told Moses over again, and here Moses comes down and he has to deal with this right out of the gate, his own brother. So he goes over to, first of all, he casts down the 10 Commandments and breaks them. He breaks the first pair of tablets. A lot of you didn't know that there were 2 sets of commandments. Read the book carefully and you'll see this. He breaks the 10 Commandments. The next time that he goes back up on the mountain to get another set, God makes him chisel them out of the rock, but God still writes with His finger on the front and back. But He makes Moses do a little work this time. He has to chisel out the stone tablets. I've gone over, but I want to finish this up. I think it's important. So when Moses confronts his brother Aaron, like, why are all these people, basically having a drunken orgy, dancing around this golden calf? What is going on? I left you in charge. And he goes, I don't know. The people they wondered where you were, and they wanted something to worship. So I told them to gather me all the gold, and I just threw it in the fire, and out came this calf. Just like that, Moses. It's almost hilarious how he shrugged his responsibility and just blew off responsibility and didn't take responsibility for his action that he did. And we're a lot like that. A lot of us have done things that we're not taking responsibility for. And I think the first step into growing up as a human being, and even more importantly, as a child of God, as a little Christ, as a Christian, is we need to start taking responsibility for our actions. Whether we drink too much, whether we're controlled by drugs or alcohol or some other substance, or whatever it is, or whether we're letting our anger control us and we're maybe verbally abusive or even physically abusive to our spouse, our friends, and maybe even our children. But we need to take responsibility for our own actions. That's what Adam and Eve didn't do in the garden. That's what when Cain killed Abel, that's what he didn't do. He didn't take responsibility, and on and on and on. It just has kept going down. And here we have another picture of Aaron. And keep in mind that when the tabernacle gets built, guess who's going to be the first high priest? Aaron. That's how God works. I'm way over. I'm so sorry. Please come back and listen. I'll try to keep them 8 to 10 minutes. Shalom, Mishpachah.